I need to tell you about the smartest financial decision I ever made, and it happened completely by accident. In 1987, I bought a small Victorian house in Portland, Oregon for $89,000. When I married Robert in 1991, I never told him I owned it, and thank God I didn't, because 3 years later, my husband and his sister tried to take everything from me. Let me back up. I need you to understand how I got to that point, because the details matter. I was 32 years old in 1987, working as a medical transcriptionist at Good Samaritan Hospital. I'd been saving since I was 25, living in a studio apartment that cost $285 a month, driving the same Honda Civic I'd bought used in 1980. I wasn't depriving myself. I just didn't need much. My parents had taught me that owning property was the only real security in this world. My mother used to say, "Diane, a woman needs a roof over her head that no one can take away." The house I found was in the Hawthorne neighborhood. It needed work. The wallpaper was peeling, the kitchen was stuck in 1952, and the bathroom had pink tile that made me feel like I was living inside a bottle of Pepto-Bismol. But it had good bones. 3 bedrooms, hardwood floors under the carpet, and a backyard with an old cherry tree. The owner was an elderly woman moving into assisted living, and she accepted my offer of $89,000. I put down $30,000 from my savings and got a mortgage for the rest at 9.5% interest. Can you imagine? That was considered a decent rate back then. I spent the next 4 years fixing it up. I stripped the wallpaper myself. I saved up and had the kitchen redone in 1989. I planted roses along the fence. That house became mine in every sense of the word. My sanctuary. My achievement. I'd done it completely on my own, without anyone's help. Then I met Robert. It was June of 1991. I was 36 years old. A friend dragged me to a fundraiser for the Portland Art Museum. I wasn't really interested in going. I was tired from work, and I had plans to repaint my bedroom that weekend. But she insisted, and I went. Robert was standing by the bar, talking to someone about architecture. He was 41, tall, with graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses that made him look intellectual. He worked as a civil engineer for the city. When we started talking, I found him charming. He was articulate, interested in art and history, and he had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. We started dating in July. By September, we were spending almost every weekend together. He'd come to my place on Friday nights, and we'd cook dinner together, watch movies, work in the garden on Saturdays. He complimented everything about the house. "You have such great taste, Diane. This place is beautiful. Your landlord is lucky to have a tenant who takes such good care of it." I never corrected him. When he assumed I was renting, I just let it slide. It wasn't a conscious decision at first. It was more like, why complicate things? We'd only been dating a few months. What did it matter who owned the house? But then things got more serious. By Christmas, we were talking about marriage. By February of 1992, he proposed. And by that point, I'd been letting him believe I was renting for 8 months. How do you suddenly say, "Oh, by the way, I actually own this house"? It felt awkward. It felt like I'd been lying, even though I hadn't technically lied. I just hadn't corrected his assumption. So I kept quiet. We got married in April of 1992 at the courthouse, just family and a few close friends. Small and simple. Robert moved in officially after the wedding, bringing his furniture, his books, his entire life into my house. He offered to pay half the rent. I told him the landlord had given me a special rate because I'd been there so long, and that $400 a month from him would cover his share. He wrote me a check every month, and I deposited it into my savings account. The mortgage payment was actually $687 a month. I paid it from my checking account like I always had. Robert never saw the statements. We kept our finances mostly separate, which was how I preferred it. He paid for groceries and utilities. I handled the rent and my own expenses. It worked, or so I thought. The first red flag came about 6 months after the wedding. Robert's sister, Linda, came to visit from Sacramento. She was 2 years older than Robert, worked in real estate, and had opinions about everything, strong opinions. The kind of opinions that she delivered as if they were facts handed down from God himself. She walked through my house like she was conducting an inspection. "This kitchen is outdated," she said, running her hand along my countertop. "And these appliances? Diane, you really should talk to your landlord about upgrading. A house this size in this neighborhood should have stainless steel." I'd redone that kitchen myself 3 years earlier. I'd picked out every cabinet, every tile, every fixture. I'd saved for months to afford it. But I just smiled and said, "It works fine for us." "Well, it's not your house, so I suppose you can't do much about it," Linda said, shrugging. "But really, Robert, you two should think about buying soon. You're just throwing money away on rent." Robert nodded. "We've talked about it. We're saving up." We hadn't talked about it, but I let it go. Linda left after 3 days, and I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. Over the next year, Linda called frequently, at least once a week, and somehow the topic always turned to real estate. I saw a beautiful Craftsman in Laurelhurst that just came on the market, 3 bedrooms, completely renovated. "You two should look at it." Or, "Robert, you know interest rates are low right now.
I always remember
This is the
that
time
day,
to buy."
sitting on the
Robert
porch,
started bringing it up
watching
too.
the rain,
Linda
and
makes a good
thinking
point,
about
Diane.
everything that
We
had
should start
changed.
seriously looking. We could afford something nice if we both saved aggressively. I told him I wasn't ready. I told him I wanted to wait a few more years. I made excuses. The truth was, I didn't want to buy another house. I already had one, but I couldn't tell him that without revealing that I'd been hiding it from him for over a year and a half. The second red flag came in early 1994. Robert asked me if I'd be willing to lend him $5,000. "Just temporarily," he said. "I made some bad investments last year, and I'm a little short. I'll pay you back in 3 months, I promise." I asked what kind of investments. He was vague. "Stock market," he said. A friend had given him a tip that didn't pan out. It made me uneasy. But we were married. You're supposed to help your spouse, right? So I withdrew $5,000 from my savings and gave it to him. 3 months passed. No repayment. 6 months passed. I asked about it. "Soon," he said. "Things are just tight right now." Then, in July of 1994, Linda called. She wanted to come visit for 2 weeks. 2 weeks! Robert said yes before asking me. When I objected, he looked at me like I was being unreasonable. "She's my sister, Diane. She's family." Linda arrived with 3 suitcases and a list of Portland restaurants she wanted to try. She set up camp in the guest bedroom and immediately started rearranging things. She moved furniture in the living room. She reorganized my kitchen cabinets. "This makes so much more sense," she'd say, not asking, just doing. One evening, about 5 days into her visit, I came home from work to find Linda and Robert sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread out in front of them. Real estate listings, mortgage calculators, financial spreadsheets. "We've been doing some research," Linda announced. "Robert told me about your financial situation, and I think I've found a solution." "My financial situation?" I looked at Robert. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Linda continued, "Here's what I'm thinking. You two have been paying rent for years. That's about $40,000 down the drain at this point, right? Meanwhile, you're sitting on savings that could be used for a down payment. If you sold some investments, combined with what Robert has, you could put down $60,000 on a really nice property." "I don't have investments to sell," I said carefully. "Well, whatever you've been saving. Robert mentioned you have quite a bit in the bank." Robert had been discussing my savings with his sister. My private financial information. I felt my face getting hot. "That's not really something I want to discuss," I said. Linda looked offended. "I'm trying to help you. Do you know how much equity you're missing out on? Every month you pay rent is a month you're building someone else's wealth instead of your own." "I understand how real estate works," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "Then you understand that you're making a mistake. Robert, talk to her. Make her see sense." That night, after Linda finally went to bed, Robert and I had our first real fight. He accused me of being secretive about money. I accused him of sharing private information with his sister. He said Linda was just trying to help. I said Linda needed to mind her own business. "Why are you so resistant to buying a house?" Robert demanded. "Most women would be thrilled at the idea of home ownership. What's wrong with you?" "What's wrong with me? I already owned a home. I was standing in it." But I couldn't say that. The lie had gone on too long, so I just said I needed time to think about it. Linda's visit finally ended after 14 days that felt like 14 months. But before she left, she pulled me aside. "I know I can be pushy," she said, "but Robert deserves better than this. He deserves a real home, not a rental. If you're not willing to invest in your future together, maybe you should ask yourself if you're really committed to this marriage." I was stunned. I didn't know what to say. She hugged me goodbye like nothing had happened and left. Things settled down for a while after that. Robert stopped bringing up buying a house. We fell back into our routine. But something had shifted. There was a tension that hadn't been there before. Then, in October of 1994, I came home early from work. I'd had a morning shift and finished at 2 p.m. Robert's car was in the driveway, which was unusual. He normally worked until 5:30. I walked into the house and heard voices in the kitchen. Robert and someone else. A man's voice I didn't recognize. I walked in to find Robert sitting at the table with a man in a suit. Papers were spread between them. "Diane!" Robert looked startled.
Welcome back to
"You're
the show.
home early.
Today, I want to share
Who's
a story
this?"
that
I
changed
asked.
everything for me.
"This is
It
Gerald
started
Chen.
as many good stories
He's a
do
real
with
estate
single,
agent.
unexpected
I
event.
asked him to come over and give us an assessment. An assessment of what? Of the house. To see what it might be worth if the owner wanted to sell. My heart started pounding. "Why would you do that?" "Because, Diane, I talked to the landlord." Everything stopped. The room seemed to tilt. "You talked to the landlord?" I repeated slowly. "Yes. I called the property management company listed on the county tax records. I wanted to see if they'd be willing to sell to us directly, bypass the whole market process, give us first right of refusal." "And what did they say?" Robert smiled. "That's the interesting part. They said there's no property management company. This house is owned by an individual, a D. Patterson. I couldn't find any information about who that is, but Gerald here ran a title search. Gerald Chen opened his folder and pulled out a document. The property at 2847 S.E. Hawthorne Boulevard is owned by Diane Marie Patterson, purchased April 1987 for $89,000. Current estimated value, $165,000. The silence was deafening. Robert was staring at me. "Diane Marie Patterson. That's you. You've been using your maiden name for the deed." I couldn't speak. My mouth was dry. "You own this house," Robert said. His voice was very quiet, very controlled. "You've owned it the entire time. You owned it before we met. You owned it when we got married. And you've been letting me pay you rent to live in your house." "It's not like that," I finally managed. "Then what is it like? Please, Diane, explain it to me." Gerald Chen looked extremely uncomfortable. "I think I should go," he said. "No," Robert said sharply. "Stay. Since my wife has been lying to me for 3 years, I'd like a professional here to explain exactly what my legal rights are. We're married. This is community property, correct?" Gerald cleared his throat. "Actually, no. Oregon is not a community property state. And since the house was purchased before the marriage with separate funds, and the deed was never changed to add the spouse, it remains the separate property of the original owner. So I have no claim to this house? Even though I've been living here? Even though I've been paying rent? Rent paid to a spouse for living in their separate property doesn't establish ownership rights. No, you'd need to prove some kind of agreement or contribution toward the actual mortgage or property value." Robert turned back to me. His face was red. "You've been collecting rent from me. For your own house. You've been treating me like a tenant." "I put that money in savings," I said. "For us. For our future." "Our future? What future? You've been lying to me since the day we met. You assumed I was renting. I never actually lied." "Oh, that's rich. You let me believe a lie for 3 years. That's the same thing, Diane." Gerald stood up. "I really think this is a private matter. How much would this house sell for?" Robert demanded. "I'd estimate $165,000 to $175,000 in the current market," Gerald said reluctantly. "And she paid $89,000. So there's about $80,000 in equity, plus improvements and appreciation." "Yes, approximately." Robert laughed, but there was no humor in it. $80,000. That's what you've been hiding from me. That's what our marriage is worth to you." "That's not fair," I said. "Fair? You want to talk about fair? I've been paying you $400 a month for almost 3 years. That's $14,400. Money I could have been saving. Money I could have been investing. Instead, I was making you richer while thinking we were in this together. We are in this together. No, we're not. Get out, Gerald. The real estate agent practically ran from the house. I heard the front door close. Robert and I stood there, staring at each other across the kitchen table. I want you to add my name to the deed, he said finally.
Today, I want to share a story
You
about
heard
a
me.
moment that
We're
completely
married.
changed
We should own this
my
house together.
perspective.
Add my name to the deed. Robert, this is my house. I bought it before we even met. And I've been living here, maintaining it, contributing to the household. I deserve half. That's not how it works. You just heard the real estate agent. I don't care what he said. I'm your husband. We're supposed to be partners. We are partners. But this house is mine. His expression changed then, became cold, calculating, fine. Then I want my rent back, all of it, $14,400. What? You've been collecting rent under false pretenses. You let me believe I was paying a landlord when actually I was just padding your savings account. That's fraud, Diane. I could probably sue you for it. You're being ridiculous. Am I? Let's see what a lawyer thinks. Let's see what a judge thinks about a wife who hides assets from her husband and collects rent from him for 3 years. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was the man I'd married? This was the man who'd stood in my garden and told me he loved me? Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of my house. Oh, now it's your house? When it's convenient for you? Yes, it's my house. My name is on the deed, and I want you to leave. Robert grabbed his car keys from the counter. This isn't over, Diane. Not even close. You're going to regret this. He stormed out. I heard his car start, heard him peel out of the driveway. I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at the papers Gerald had left behind. The title search, my name in black and white. Diane Marie Patterson, owner. I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt strong. Instead, I just felt tired. Robert didn't come home that night. Or the next night. On the third day, I got a call from Linda. You have some nerve, she said without preamble. Do you know where my brother is? He's staying with me. He flew to Sacramento because he can't stand to be in that house with you. Linda, I don't want to discuss this. You lied to him. You pretended to be some struggling renter when all along you owned a house worth over $150,000. Do you know how humiliating this is for him? I didn't lie, he assumed. Oh, spare me. You manipulated him. You took his money. You made him look like a fool. And now you're going to pay for it. What's that supposed to mean? Robert talked to a lawyer. You committed fraud. You took rent payments under false pretenses. You owe him that money back, plus damages for emotional distress. And if you don't pay, he's going to sue you for half the value of the house based on community property laws. Oregon isn't a community property state. Then he'll find another angle. Palimony. Common law contribution. Unjust enrichment. The lawyer said there are options. And trust me, Diane, Robert is angry enough to pursue every single one. Linda, this is between Robert and me. No, it's between you and our entire family now. Because you made him look like an idiot. You made all of us look like idiots. We welcomed you into this family, and this is how you repay us? I hung up on her. My hands were shaking. Over the next week, I got 3 more calls from Linda. Each one more aggressive than the last. Each one threatening legal action. I stopped answering when I saw her number. Then, 2 weeks after our fight, Robert came home. I heard his key in the lock, and suddenly he was standing in the living room with 2 suitcases. We need to talk, he said. I thought you were in Sacramento. Linda drove me back. She's outside in the car. Can I come in, or is this not allowed in my own home anymore? I gestured to the couch. He sat down. I sat across from him in the armchair. I've been thinking, Robert said. I've been angry. I still am angry. But I love you, Diane, and I don't want our marriage to end over this. I didn't say anything, but things need to change. If we're going to move forward, I need to feel like an equal partner in this relationship. Not a tenant, not a guest, a husband. Okay, I said carefully. So here's what I propose. You add my name to the deed. We own the house together, 50-50. And in exchange, I'll forget about the rent money. We'll call it even. Robert, I can't do that. Why not? Because this house is mine. I worked for it. I saved for it. I bought it on my own, and I've maintained it on my own. Before you, it was mine. And if we divorce... Jesus, Diane, is that what you're planning? I'm being realistic. If we divorce, I don't want to have to buy you out of half of a house that was mine to begin with. So you don't trust me. That's what this is about. You don't trust this marriage. I'm just protecting myself by treating me like an outsider, by making sure I can never really be part of your life. We were both standing now, both shouting. You know what? Robert said. Fine. Keep your house. Keep your precious independence. But don't expect me to keep paying for the privilege of living here. If I'm just a tenant, then I'm going to find somewhere else to rent. Somewhere where my landlord isn't my wife. So you're leaving? I'm giving you a choice. Add me to the deed, or I'm gone. I looked at him. Really looked at him. At the man I'd married less than 3 years ago, the man who'd proposed to me in the garden of this house, the man who was now trying to manipulate me into giving him half of my most valuable asset. Then you're gone, I said quietly. His face went pale. You're serious? Yes. You'd rather lose your husband than share your house. I'd rather lose a husband who's only interested in what I own. Robert stared at me for a long moment. Then he picked up his suitcases. You're going to regret this, Diane. When you're old and alone in this house, you're going to wish you'd chosen differently. He walked out. I heard Linda's car door slam, heard them drive away. I stood in my living room, in my house, the house I'd bought when I was 32 years old, with money I'd saved working night shifts and double shifts and every holiday. The house that had been mine for 7 years before Robert ever set foot in it. And I didn't regret a single thing. Robert filed for divorce 3 weeks later. His lawyer tried to claim unjust enrichment based on the rent payments. My lawyer submitted bank statements showing that the money had been deposited into a joint savings account that Robert had access to the entire time. The judge ruled that the rent payments were a contribution to household expenses and did not establish any claim to the property. Robert got nothing. Linda sent me a letter. A long, nasty letter about how I'd destroyed her brother's life, about how I was a cold, calculating woman who cared more about money than love, about how I'd end up alone and miserable. I threw it away without finishing it. The divorce was final in March of 1995. I was 39 years old, divorced, and living alone in the house I'd bought 8 years earlier. People asked me if I regretted keeping the house secret, if I regretted not telling Robert from the beginning, if I thought things might have turned out differently if I'd been honest. Maybe they would have. Maybe if I'd told him on that first weekend when he complimented my taste and said my landlord was lucky, maybe things would have been different. Maybe he would have been impressed instead of threatened. Maybe we would have built a real partnership instead of a relationship based on his assumptions and my omissions. But I don't think so. Because when he found out the truth, his first instinct wasn't to be proud of me. It wasn't to celebrate my accomplishment or admire my independence. His first instinct was to demand half, to insist that he deserved ownership of something he'd had no part in creating. And that told me everything I needed to know about who Robert really was. I'm 68 years old now. I still live in that house in Portland. I paid off the mortgage in 2001. The neighborhood has changed dramatically. Young families, new restaurants, rising property values. My little Victorian that I bought for $89,000 is now worth over $700,000. I've been offered that much by developers who want to tear it down and build condos. But I'm not selling. This house is mine. It's been mine for 38 years. It's where I proved to myself that I didn't need a man to take care of me. It's where I learned that protecting your assets isn't selfish, it's smart. It's where I discovered that being alone is better than being with someone who sees you as a means to an end. I never remarried. I dated a few times over the years, but nothing serious. And you know what? I'm fine with that. Better than fine. I have my house, my garden, my cherry tree that's still producing fruit after all these years. I have my independence. I have my dignity. And I have the satisfaction of knowing that when Robert and Linda tried to take what was mine, I didn't let them. My mother was right all those years ago. A woman needs a roof over her head that no one can take away. And thanks to a decision I made when I was 32 years old, and thanks to a secret I kept when I probably shouldn't have, I still have mine.